A life-changing encounter. The early morning air was crisp, filled with the scent of damp earth and freshly cut grass. Claire Mitchell's sneakers pounded rhythmically against the jogging trail, her breath steady, her mind focused. Running had always been her escape, a way to clear her thoughts, to embrace the quiet moments before the world woke up. But today was different. As she rounded a bend in Willow Creek Park, the golden sunrise casting long shadows over the path, something caught her eye. A small, trembling figure barely visible through the morning mist. Claire slowed her pace, her heart skipping a beat. At first, she thought it was a rabbit, maybe a fox. But as she stepped closer, the truth sent a pang through her chest. It was a puppy. Tiny, scrappy, alone. A silent plea for help. The little dog crouched low in the damp grass, his matted fur tangled with twigs and dirt. His ribs pressed against his thin skin with each rapid breath, and his amber eyes locked onto Claire, filled with something between fear and desperate hope. Claire swallowed hard, crouching down slowly. "Hey there, little guy," she whispered, keeping her voice soft. The puppy flinched but didn't run. His ears twitched at her voice, and his tail gave the smallest, most hesitant wag. That tiny movement nearly broke her. She glanced around the empty park, searching for a frantic owner calling out a name, for any sign that this puppy belonged to someone. But the only sounds were the rustling leaves and the distant chirping of birds. No leash, no collar, no one coming for him. Her stomach twisted at the thought of someone abandoning him out here, alone, in the cold. A choice that couldn't be ignored. Claire reached out a hand, slow and cautious. "You hungry, buddy?" The puppy's nose twitched, his body shifting forward an inch. He hesitated, as if expecting her to snatch him up or scare him away. But when her fingers brushed against his fur, he stayed. He smelled of rain-soaked earth and something sour, like he had been out here for days, maybe longer. Claire exhaled softly. "Okay, little guy, let's get you out of here." She carefully scooped him into her arms. He was lighter than she expected. A bundle of bones wrapped in patchy fur. He stiffened at first, his tiny paws pressing against her chest. But then, he let out a deep, exhausted sigh and nestled his head against her, as if giving in to the warmth. Claire adjusted her grip, holding him close as she turned back toward the jogging trail. She barely noticed the way his little body trembled, or how he pressed into her as if he had never been held before. By the time she reached the quiet suburban streets leading back to her house, she already knew she wasn't leaving him behind. A new beginning. The moment she stepped inside her cozy home, she placed the puppy gently onto a soft towel near the kitchen floor. The warm scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the space, but Claire's attention was locked onto the fragile little creature now stationed in her home. She grabbed a shallow dish of water, placing it in front of him. At first, he only sniffed at it, uncertain. Then, as if realizing it was real, he dipped his nose in and began lapping up the water eagerly, his tiny tail swaying weakly. Claire crouched beside him, watching him closely. "You poor thing," she murmured. "I don't know what you've been through, but you're safe now." The puppy ignored her words, his focus entirely on the water. Now that she could see him in proper light, his condition was even worse than she had thought. His fur, which looked like it had once been a rich golden brown, was dull and patchy. His ribs were painfully prominent. His eyes, sunken with exhaustion, held a story she would never fully understand. She knew she couldn't do this alone. Reaching for her phone, she dialed the first number that came to mind. A call for hope. The line rang twice before a familiar voice picked up. "Dr. Evans' clinic. This is Jenny. How can I help you?" Claire sighed, running a hand through her ponytail. "Hey, Jenny. It's Claire. Listen, I found this puppy while I was jogging. He looks awful, skinny, dehydrated, maybe sick. Do you think Dr. Evans could squeeze us in today?" There was a brief pause on the other end. Then, concern laced in Jenny's voice. "Oh no. Poor thing. Hold on. Let me check." A moment later, Jenny returned. "Dr. Evans can see you this afternoon. Bring him in as soon as you can." Relief flooded through Claire. "Thank you, Jenny. I'll see you soon." As she hung up, she turned back to the little dog who had collapsed beside the water dish, exhausted but safe. He blinked up at her, his ears twitching slightly. Claire reached out, brushing her fingers lightly against his tiny paw. "All right, buddy," she whispered. "Let's get you checked out." The unexpected truth. The small veterinary clinic sat on the edge of town, nestled between a bakery and a bookstore, its glass windows reflecting the late morning sun. The air smelled of fresh rain, the kind that washed the streets clean and made everything feel new. But inside Claire Mitchell's car, there was only tension. She glanced at the passenger seat, where the tiny, scrappy puppy lay curled inside a soft blanket. His fur, though still damp and tangled from his time in the wild, had a golden hue beneath the dirt. His deep brown eyes flickered open now and then, but exhaustion kept him from staying awake. Claire tightened her grip on the steering wheel. She hadn't realized it until now, but she had been holding her breath the entire drive. This wasn't just a routine vet visit. This was the moment of truth, a warm welcome. The clinic door chimed softly as Claire stepped inside, cradling the puppy in her arms. The scent of antiseptic and clean linen filled the air, a stark contrast to the damp earth and rain she had grown accustomed to that morning. Behind the front desk, Jenny, the receptionist, gasped the moment she saw the tiny bundle in Claire's arms. "Oh, Claire." Jenny's voice was soft, laced with concern. She quickly stepped around the desk, reaching out as if she, too, wanted to scoop the little dog into safety. "He's so small." Claire swallowed hard, adjusting the blanket. "I found him in Willow Creek Park. No collar, no tags, nothing." Jenny's eyes flickered with something unreadable. "You think someone left him there?" Claire's stomach twisted. She didn't want to believe that. I don't know, but he's not just some stray. There's something different about him." As if sensing the conversation was about him, the puppy let out a soft whimper, his tiny paws shifting against Claire's arm. Jenny gave a small, reassuring smile. "You did the right thing bringing him here. Let's see what Dr. Evans says." The examination begins. The exam room was quiet, save for the steady hum of the overhead lights. Claire stood to the side, arms crossed, watching as Dr. Evans, an older man with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes, gently ran his hands over the frail body of the puppy. The little dog barely moved. His chest rose and fell in slow, steady breaths. "Thin," Dr. Evans murmured, "but not just from malnutrition." Claire furrowed her brows. "What do you mean?" Dr. Evans didn't answer right away. Instead, he lifted the puppy's front leg carefully, inspecting the tiny pads of his paws, then pressed lightly against his ribs. The puppy let out a soft, whimpering sigh, but didn't resist. "Any idea how long he's been out there?" Dr. Evans finally asked, glancing up. Claire shook her head. "I wish I knew, but I have a feeling it's been a while." The vet nodded, deep in thought. "Something's off here." Claire's heart skipped. "Off? What do you mean?" Dr. Evans hesitated, his fingers brushing over the puppy's shoulder blades before moving to his ears. "Let me run a few quick tests. I don't want to jump to conclusions." The moment of truth. The next 30 minutes felt like an eternity. Claire sat in the waiting area, tapping her foot anxiously against the floor. Jenny had offered her coffee, but she barely touched it. Her mind was spinning. Why did Dr. Evans look so concerned? What was it about the puppy that didn't add up? Finally, the door to the exam room opened, and Dr. Evans stepped out, holding a clipboard. His face was unreadable. Claire stood immediately. "Well," Dr. Evans exhaled, rubbing his chin before speaking. "Claire, this little guy isn't just any puppy. There's something unusual about him. An unbelievable diagnosis. Claire felt her stomach tighten. Unusual? How? Dr. Evans motioned for her to follow him back inside. The puppy, now curled on the examination table, blinked at her with those same deep, knowing eyes. Dr. Evans tapped his pen against the clipboard. For one, his bone structure isn't typical for a dog his age. Claire frowned. Meaning? The vet sighed. Based on his size, he should be around 4 months old, but his bone density suggests something else. His growth doesn't match. It's like his body isn't aging the way it should. Claire blinked, struggling to process. Wait, you mean he's younger? Dr. Evans hesitated. Not necessarily. It's almost as if his development was delayed or altered. Claire's pulse quickened. But how is that possible? Dr. Evans shook his head. I don't know yet, but I've sent his tests for further analysis. There's something about his genetic makeup that I can't explain. Jenny, who had quietly stepped into the room, whispered under her breath. You don't think? Dr. Evans shot her a look, then turned back to Claire. For now, let's focus on getting him healthy. He's weak, but his vitals are improving. With proper nutrition and care, he'll recover. But there's more to him than meets the eye. Claire looked down at the puppy. He wasn't just any stray. She reached out, gently stroking his fur. His tiny tail gave a faint wag, as if he could sense the shift in energy. Whatever his story is, Claire murmured, he's not alone anymore. A new chapter begins. As they prepared to leave, Jenny handed Claire a small bag of medications and supplements. These should help with his recovery. But if anything changes, let us know. Claire nodded. I will. She scooped the little dog into her arms once more. He snuggled into her chest, warmer now, less fragile. Dr. Evans watched them for a moment before smiling softly. Claire, I think he chose you for a reason. She swallowed the lump in her throat, stepping into the cool afternoon air. Whatever mystery surrounded this puppy, one thing was clear. Their journey together had only just begun. The little pup with a big secret. The drive home from the vet clinic was eerily quiet. The puppy, now securely curled up on the passenger seat, had dozed off almost instantly. His tiny chest rose and fell in steady, rhythmic breaths, his paws twitching slightly in his sleep. Claire Mitchell glanced at him every few minutes, her thoughts tangled in a whirlwind of emotions. Dr. Evans' words echoed in her mind. His growth doesn't match. His development seems delayed or altered. There's something unusual about him. Claire had brought this little guy in expecting to hear that he was unnerved, sick, or just in need of basic care. But instead, she had walked away with more questions than answers. She gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. Who had left him out there? Why did he seem different from other puppies? And most importantly, what was she supposed to do now? A strange adjustment. By the time Claire pulled into her driveway, the puppy stirred, letting out a soft, tired yawn. His amber eyes blinked open as she unbuckled her seatbelt. All right, buddy, she murmured. Welcome home. She carried him inside, gently setting him on a warm, fluffy blanket in the living room. The house was quiet except for the faint ticking of the kitchen clock and the soft rustle of tree branches outside. The puppy stretched, his little legs shaking slightly as he stood. Then, he did something strange. Instead of sniffing around cautiously, as most puppies would in a new environment, he took a few careful steps forward and then stopped. He studied the room. Claire felt a slight shiver run down her spine. It was the way he looked at everything, not just with curiosity, but with calculation. Most puppies would be stumbling around, distracted by every new smell or object. But this one, he seemed to be assessing, understanding. It was as if he already knew this wasn't just a stop along the way. This was home. Claire let out a slow breath, shaking off the odd feeling. She knelt beside him, offering a small dish of food. Here you go. You need this more than anything. The puppy sniffed at it once before eating, Not ravenously, not desperately, but in a slow, controlled way, as if he had learned to ration. Claire swallowed hard. What had this little guy been through? The first sign. The night passed quietly. The puppy slept soundly in his little blanket nest, his tiny body curled into a ball of golden fur. Claire, however, tossed and turned in bed, thoughts racing. By morning, she woke to an unexpected sight. The puppy sitting by the window, staring outside, completely still. Her heart skipped. For a moment, it almost looked like he was waiting for something or someone. She walked over slowly, her bare feet quiet against the hardwood floor. The puppy turned his head slightly, acknowledging her presence, but didn't look startled. Most dogs, even full-grown ones, flinched at sudden movement. But this one, he was too calm, too aware. Claire hesitated before crouching down beside him. "What are you looking for, buddy?" she whispered. He blinked at her. Then, just as smoothly, he turned his head back toward the window. Claire followed his gaze, but there was nothing there. Just the backyard, the trees swaying gently in the breeze. She let out a small chuckle, running a hand through his fur. "You're a weird little guy, you know that." For the first time since she had found him, he wagged his tail. Something more than instinct. As the days passed, the puppy settled in, but not in the way Claire expected. Most rescues were timid, nervous, jumpy in a new home. But not him. Within 2 days, he had memorized the layout of the house. Within 3 days, he responded to his name, Max. Within a week, he was displaying behaviors Claire had only seen in trained dogs, watching doors, reacting to small sounds before she even noticed them, following her without hesitation, like a natural protector. And then there was the incident with the door. Claire had stepped outside to grab a package from her porch, leaving the front door slightly ajar. When she turned back, Max was standing in the doorway, completely still, blocking the entrance. It wasn't a playful stance. It was a guard stance, like he was making sure nothing got in, or that she didn't leave. Claire's stomach did a strange flip. Most puppies chased their owners excitedly when they left. They jumped, barked, begged for attention. But Max wasn't reacting like a puppy at all. He was reacting like a guardian, an unbelievable revelation. That night, Claire sat in bed, scrolling through her phone, trying to make sense of it all. She searched for anything: dogs with heightened awareness, unusual canine behaviors, genetic anomalies. Nothing quite fit. And then, a message popped up on her phone. "Dr. Evans, Claire, I just got some of Max's test results back. I need you to call me first thing in the morning. I think we're dealing with something I've never seen before." Her breath hitched. She turned her head to the side. Max lay curled on the floor, watching her, his amber eyes calm, knowing. Claire swallowed hard. She didn't know what the vet was going to tell her, but she was certain of one thing. Max wasn't just an abandoned puppy. He was something more. And tomorrow, she would finally find out the truth. The truth that changed everything. The sun had barely begun to rise when Claire's phone buzzed against her nightstand. She didn't hesitate. Dr. Evans had texted her the night before, asking her to call first thing in the morning. She had barely slept since. Her eyes flicked toward the floor, where Max lay curled up, watching her. There was something about the way he looked at her. It wasn't just the gaze of a puppy. It was the gaze of something that understood. Claire swallowed hard and reached for her phone. The call that changed everything. Dr. Evans. Claire's voice came out tighter than she intended. The vet's voice was calm, but there was an urgency behind it. "Claire, I just got the last batch of test results. We need to talk." She sat up, gripping the edge of her blanket. "What did you find?" There was a short pause before he spoke again. "Max isn't an ordinary puppy." Her breath hitched. "What do you mean?" Dr. Evans exhaled. "His blood work shows anomalies I've never seen before. His growth rate, his muscle structure, even his brain activity. It's all accelerated, not in a way that suggests illness, but in a way that suggests. He hesitated. Suggests what? Claire pressed. That he's not just any dog. Claire frowned, glancing down at Max, who was still watching her with those deep, intelligent eyes. What are you saying, Dr. Evans? There was another pause before he finally answered. I think Max might have been part of something. Her heart pounded. Part of what? Dr. Evans cleared his throat. I checked his records against missing animal databases, police K-9 reports, even military projects. I didn't find an exact match, but Claire, his genetics don't align with any typical domestic dog breed. His intelligence, his awareness, it's beyond anything I've encountered. The room suddenly felt too small, too quiet. Claire swallowed. Are you saying he was created? I don't know, Dr. Evans admitted, but someone knew what he was, and someone left him out there. A chill ran down Claire's spine. Why had Max been abandoned? And more importantly, who had abandoned him? Max's choice. Claire ended the call, her mind spinning. She turned to Max, who was now standing. His ears perked up, tail still, eyes focused on her. Max, she whispered. He blinked, then took slow, careful steps toward her, placing his tiny paw against her knee. A silent gesture. A confirmation. He knew. He had always known. Whatever had happened to him before, whatever secrets lay in his past, they didn't matter anymore. Claire let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Okay, she said softly, placing her hand over his paw. I don't care where you came from. You're staying with me. Max's tail wagged, just once, as if he had been waiting for her to say it. A new beginning. Days turned into weeks. Max grew stronger, healthier, more confident. But more than that, he grew into his place by Claire's side. He wasn't just a pet. He was family. And maybe he wasn't an ordinary dog. Maybe he had been part of something bigger, something unknown. But in the end, none of that mattered. Because when given the choice to stay or to leave, Max had chosen her. And Claire had chosen him. No past, no mysteries, just a future, together. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.